guys, Donna here, or DM Needom. I had the pleasure of sitting down to interview Dixie Jackson. She has a new book coming out on the 14th called Reclaiming Raylyn. The reason why I'm making this little addendum is because the very intro of the video got cut off. We were recording in Be Live, and there's a countdown. And usually after the countdown in Hollywood, you have a moment and then it starts to pick up. However, this didn't pick up that quickly. So this is why the addendum. But while I have you here for a second or two, I think you really should watch the video because Dixie is a very interesting lady and she has quite an interesting take on her books. She doesn't always write about the hunks, and that's okay because, sometimes we need a fantasy or a romance with real people. And that can inspire us for romance, love in our own lives. So stick around, listen to what Dixie has to say. She has some great insight about being a military wife, among other things, and being a mountain girl. So check it out, and thanks for tuning in. Bye. Which should be this Thursday, correct?
That is correct. That's the official release date. However, what nobody knows yet, and you're the first to find out, is it's actually live on Amazon today.
And the reviews that are coming in, I mean, that's pretty cool that it's already out. And the reviews that you got coming in are 5-star?
Yes, correct? They are. One of the advantages of being an indie author is that you can do things that you may not be able to do with traditional publishing. So I was actually able to collect an ARC team, and the ARC readers have been sending back phenomenal feedback. It's been really exciting.
So how excited are you about this release?
Oh my goodness, it's so excited. Reclaiming Raylyn is actually a re-release. I've been in the game a long time. A lot of people don't know that because I've been writing my whole life, probably before I even could read a story, I could tell a story. But I really started getting serious about publishing back in about 2009. And I think what happened was the thought of turning 40 and not having accomplished what I wanted to accomplish by then kind of hit me in the face right then. So by 2010, I saw my first release, although it was just an ebook. It wasn't in print yet. But then right around the 2016-ish mark, I'd been through 2 or 3 presses, and I took a little sabbatical for a couple of years. I just needed to kind of pull back and look at things and have a breath. And then 2018, I really started coming back strong and had my first re-release last fall. So Reclaiming Raylyn, the first time it released, it was toward the end of that first leg of my publishing journey. It was well received, but not widely received. And this time around, it has been phenomenal. The people that have mentioned it, seen that it's coming out, been excited, left me a comment, can't wait. And then, of course, the reviews that are coming in from the ARC reviewers, it's been amazing. It's been so much fun. It's just been a joy.
Can you tell us a little bit about the book and what inspired it?
Absolutely. So obviously Reclaiming Raylyn is about a couple. They're 40-ish. Gavin is a career Marine. He's coming up on his 30-year mark, which for an enlisted man is the time that's it. You can go no further. And they've been through so many deployments that they've kind of lost track of who they are as a couple. They've both grown in different directions. And I saw that a lot because I was married to a Marine. I'm still married to a Marine. He's retired now, but I saw that a lot through his career. The constant deployment cycle, you live in a pressure cooker, and it really begins to weigh heavy after a while. And you find yourself, your spouse is coming back, and over 9 months, a year, or in my case, I had 1 years back to back. I didn't see my spouse for 2 years, except for a few days in between. You grow. I mean, humans grow. They change. The essence of who you are, I don't think ever changes, but humans are continually growing. So when you're thrown into a situation where you haven't seen this person for a while, and they suddenly realize you've changed, and you realize that that person's changed, you kind of have to learn to love that person as they are now, not as you thought they were or who they were then. So that's the essence of the story, is there's two that are in their 40s who have come up on the threat of retirement looming there large, and they've been separated for so long. And who are we now? How do we get past this hump? Can we make this work? Can we stay married? Do we even like each other anymore? Those are questions that have to be asked and answered. So that's the inspiration and the premise of the story. A lot of people don't realize that the Marine Corps has the highest rate of divorce of any of the armed services.
Wow.
And there's this little saying that that if the Marine Corps wished for the person to have a spouse, they would have been assigned one at supply. So that kind of gives you, when you marry your Marine and you hear that, you're like, oh, whoa. So this is what I'm in for. Okay. So yeah, it's a little bit of a pressure cooker. It's the part of the military genre that nobody really discusses. Everything's usually, rainbows and flowers and bare-chested special ops guys. And yeah, my characters are a little different.
Well, and that's a nice thing, and one thing while you're talking, I know people when they retire, they have to deal with giving up that part of their identity as well. So on top of all of the romantic,
Yes.
that has to be a major.
It's a major life change. We've been in retirement mode since summer of 2018. That was his last, that was when he retired. We're still in the kind of adjustment period, because you go from this very strict, structured, rigid lifestyle to all of a sudden, nobody's telling you what uniform to wear in the morning. Housing isn't driving by and telling you your lawn's 2 inches too tall. You're kind of to your own devices for the first time in 30 years. It's quite a change. I think, well, you can take the Marine out of the Marine Corps, but you can never take the Corps out of the Marine. So he's still a Marine through and through, but there's this whole new thing going on. In fact, well, my husband decided that now that he's not a Marine, he's going to be a paramedic, and he wants to fly on the life flight chopter. So I'm like, oh, good. So you went from one dangerous, the saving grace. My thing was, well, my saving grace is that you're not going to be shot at every day, I guess. And then I found out that one of the communities not too far from us, they get shot at regularly. Apparently, those people don't want help when help comes. So I'm like, okay, well, you're not working in that district. We've had enough of that in our life. That's the line, mister. So yeah, but yeah, it's a whole new, you have to deal with that. Like, who am I without this uniform? Who is he without this uniform? Who am I if I'm not the wife anymore? What is my role now? So yeah, it's a big adjustment.
I mean, like I said, I know from normal experience that when you leave something that is part of your identity, it doesn't matter what age it affects you, because you have to get used to it. And
absolutely, yeah.
I mean,
change.
But I would think 30 years being married to a Marine that has had multiple deployments, it's always been an adjustment for you. So you have to be very adaptable. And
yes.
I commend you for that, because a lot of people couldn't.
Thank you.
Now to get back on topic about your books. You have 2 other books that are currently for sale on Amazon: Flashpoint 3, the prequel, and The Delaney's of Delaware, the complete collection. Can you tell us a little about these 2 books?
So The Delaney's of Delaware, the first book, it's actually a series of 3 books, and they're all full length. So you're getting 3 full length novels in a box set. They originally released as standalones. And when I came back into the game in 2018, I was like, well, I don't have anything new completely ready to go, but I want to get something out there so that I can start rebuilding my fan base. Some people knew. I mean, they stuck with me. They're like, just tell me when you come back, whatever the first thing is out, I'm buying it. Just, keep in touch. So I have had fans that have kept in touch with me all this time. But then I was like, how do I build the new base? And there's nothing new. I need to get something out. Well, I have the rights to all these all these things that I had before. I can throw them out there, recover them, retitle them, give them a brush up with the edits, whatever. So that's the Delaney's. They are actually, a lot of people, when they see my stuff that's coming out, recently, like in the last few weeks, and Reclaiming Raylyn, and they see the blippets about what's coming this summer. That's a big deal. I can't wait. They put my name together with romance suspense, but what I actually tout myself as is the romance writer who blurs all the genre lines and also trickles over into women's fiction, suspense. I write whatever my heart tells me to. So yes, a lot of my characters are military or security people or prior military, but I also write just regular people. And that's what the Delaney's are. They're farmers. So it's small town romance at its best, because it's some humor in there. And it is set in my husband's hometown. It is my tribute to my husband's home county, Sussex County, Delaware, which they call slower, lower Delaware, because life is much slower there. You just kind of go at their pace. They're on their own standard time. Wonderful place to go and visit and grow up. But yeah, so that's what that is. The second book was actually my favorite to write of that series, because it's big town girl meets small town guy, and they really clash. So there's a lot of humor there. Like, he doesn't understand her way of thinking, and she sure doesn't understand him. So that's the Delaney's. Flashpoint is a prequel to the series that I will have start rolling out this summer. It's called the S3 series, and S3 is an acronym for the name of the security company that's involved in the stories. And if you want to know what it stands for, you're going to have to buy the books, because I'm not telling. So that'll be there's the hook. If you want to know, you got to buy. But so it's a set of 2 full-length novels, and the one book is the very first book that I ever had in publication, and it was only out in ebook at first. I retained the rights from the very first publisher. The second publisher I had it through actually put it in paperback. But it's about a prior Marine who has a deep, dark secret why he left the Marine Corps. He meets the woman of his dreams, who happens to be a Marine's daughter, and he's one of the top snipers in the Marine Corps, and he's being held prisoner. So his job is to protect the daughter, and things get heated from there, as you can imagine. But why it's a prequel is because his brother is mentioned in the end of the book, and people kept asking me, why doesn't Trent have his own story? And I never really thought of him as a main character. He was always, in my mind, just a secondary character. But the more I thought about it and looked at it, the more I knew that there was more there. So the second half of Flashpoint is a character named Kyle Montgomery, and he was supposed to be the start of a new series years ago that just never came to fruition. Somewhere in my imagination, probably in the middle of the night, I woke up, and the characters from the first book and the characters from Kyle's book were all talking like they were old friends. And I was like, okay, there's something here. Obviously, these people belong together somehow. And so that spurred what's going to be the S3 series. And the first book is going to drop sometime late this summer.
Nice. Very nice. So out of the 3 books you have finished, which is your favorite? And which one did you have the most fun writing? And you don't have to pick a fave, because they're all like
the one that was the most fun to write was the Delaney's, out of the ones that I have out right now, because there's humor in it, and because it was about my husband's hometown, and I could be kind of tongue-in-cheek at times. It wasn't such serious, it was just a lot of fun to write. All my books are fun to write, but that was just like a lot of fun. There's a case of I believe the first book in that series, where the couple ends up in I don't know if you know what Peebles is, but it's kind of a Southern staple. A lot of in communities, the little old ladies shop there. So when the couple ends up in the dressing room and the little old ladies are in the store, yeah, so that was a lot of fun to write. I was like, wonder what would happen if I put these two in a dressing room and things progress from there. And then the little old ladies are out there, you can seriously offend some little blue-haired ladies if you try hard enough. Um, so that was a lot of fun to write. My favorite, I think, is probably Reclaiming Raylyn right now. And not just because it's, live on Amazon, but because I share a special connection with Raylyn. She's a sister wife, even if only in my imagination. And she survived 30 years, and not many girls do that. So, yeah.
If you have a connection, you put a lot of your heart into this character then.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about who Dixie is. Your bio says you grew up in the Ozark Mountains and now reside in the Great Smoky Mountains. So
Yes.
I guess you're a mountain girl. So do you other, and is there a huge difference in between?
Where I grew up in the Ozarks, there are mountains there. I grew up in the foothills. Now that I live in the Smokies and I've explored the world extensively, I realize that the Ozark Mountains aren't nearly as huge as I thought they were when I was a kid. They're more like hills compared to what I live now. But there's a lot of similarities in the culture. Culture's very similar, very down to earth people, nature people. A lot of outdoorsy things go on. So yeah, I'm lived on the beach for years, and I won't lie, there are times I miss the beach. I don't miss the humidity, and I must be a mountain girl because I keep coming back for more. It's been quiet. We needed quiet. We had been on the go for so long. Him for 30 years, and I was with him for 23 of that, and we're going on 24 years married. So we just needed to slow down, and we had passed by the Smokies many times. And when we knew we needed to buy a retirement house, this was on the radar as to where we would go. And here we are. One of the funny things is I live in a real small town. It's very rural here where I live. One town over is called Waynesville. Where I grew up in Missouri, 10 miles from my house was a Waynesville. And every time we would drive by on the 40 and I would see the Waynesville, North Carolina sign, I would joke and I would say, wouldn't it be hilarious if someday, and here we are 10 miles from another Waynesville.
Nice.
So, yeah, but wouldn't trade for anything. It's beautiful here and quiet. And the Great Smoky Mountain National Park is my backyard. I'm sure everybody's heard of the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. Gatlinburg, Tennessee is on the western side of the park. We're on the eastern side of the park and on the North Carolina side. And I'm literally 15 minutes or so from the gate to the national park. So we see elk here. We have bears. We have all the good, cool mountain things.
We have coyotes and turkeys. So yeah, critters. So I know you're married. Kids and pets?
Yes, we have a 30-year-old son and a 27-year-old daughter. They're up and out on their own. And we have two beautiful fur babies. We are dedicated rescue parents. Whenever we can take another one in, we go to the shelter and we rescue. Our current babies are a golden doodle and a cowboy corgi, and she is Her Royal Highness because she is very spoiled, and the golden doodle just sort of puts up with her. So caters to her every whim.
Hard. Let's see. So since you've traveled extensively, what is your favorite place that you visited?
I have a couple. One of my favorite places that I visited, I love zoos and I love aquariums. Whenever we were stationed somewhere, like we were inland away from the ocean, I could go to the aquarium and get my fix. But zoos are just, I think they're the coolest things. They're such learning opportunities. And I know a lot of people are worried that the animals are in captivity. But I think if they're treated humanely, we're in good shape because they are so educational. And some of the zoos, if the animals weren't there, they would be extinct. So, we gotta protect the weak. But one of the best zoos I've ever been to was in Portland, Oregon. We were stationed there, and it's very interactive. It's a lot of hands-on kind of zoo experience. And there's one part where you're learning about the Amazon, and they've built the floor. I have no idea what, but it's the coolest thing. If you take your shoes off and walk, it feels as though you're walking on the floor of the Amazon jungle.
Wow.
So that was just phenomenal. One other place that comes to mind is the Grand Canyon. We were there a couple of years ago. We were traveling moving from West Coast to East Coast again. And we stopped and spent a couple of days in Arizona. And we got to visit the Grand Canyon. Most profound experience, it's the winter. There was like probably 300 or 400 people on the rim. And as we approached to go to the viewing stations, it was quiet. I mean, you could have heard a pin drop. And that's how profound it is if you've never experienced it, it's really hard to explain, but it's just that awe-inspiring that it just renders people speechless. Another cool thing, though, that I know that you're into music. So another cool thing that we got to do while we were in Arizona, I just thought of this. We actually stood on the corner in Winslow. There's the Eagles, the tribute is there. And yes, the corner in Winslow actually exists. It's a place you can go there and stand on that corner. The red truck from the song is sitting on the street. It was, and they play Eagles music 24/7. You're standing there and the Eagles music is playing. So that was a really cool thing too, a really cool experience.
Very cool. You basically, your bio says that you've been inspired since you were a little kid and that your 6th grade teacher helped motivate that.
Yep.
Do you remember the types of things that used to inspire you?
Absolutely. Before 6th grade, before there was creative writing class, the library was huge for me. We would go to my mom would pack us in the car and we'd go to the library. Like, I can't remember if we went once a week or every 2 weeks, but you were allowed X amount of books and you checked them out and then you took them back, in a couple of weeks. And I would check out the most allowed books that we were allowed to have. So the maximum, I had them in my little bag. And some of the books that I started on were Nancy Drew, Encyclopedia Brown, the Laura Ingalls Wilder books. We grew up like maybe an hour from Mansfield, Missouri, and that's where Laura and Manly in real life, they spent their golden years. That's one of the books, The Golden Years. That's where they stayed, was in Mansfield, Missouri, and every fall they have Wilder Days where they celebrate that Laura Ingalls Wilder lived there. They open the old house and they have Pa's Fiddle, and somebody always brings it out on the street and plays Pa's Fiddle during Wilder Days. So that's really cool. So Laura Ingalls was always, kind of an influence because we lived there. We knew who she was. She wasn't just the figure on the TV. She was real to us. So there was that. But then later with creative writing, one of the things that my teacher did, and they call it flash fiction now, but we were doing that before it was cool to do that. He would give us a picture and tell us, write 500 words on what you see in this picture. And you have the next 20 minutes to work on that or whatever. So we were flash fictioning, before it was called flash fiction. And then, of course, later in the teen years, all through high school, it was the angsty teen drama. Whatever was the current drama of the day, that was a story to me, and I'd run home and write about it. So those were some things.
Always inspired, always getting inspiration and other events. So you've had you have the book out in print. What's it like when you hold your work in your hand?
Phenomenal. It is a joy. It's you get the goosebumps, you get the chills. It's exciting to see your ebook go up on Amazon. You're like, I did that. But when you can hold it in your hand and see that your name's on the cover, that's just amazing. It's an amazing feeling. The first publisher that did it for me was my second press. The lady that ran that press, I actually knew her in real life. We were friends. We still are friends. In fact, we've moved closer now. The weekend that she was working on it for a surprise for me, I had no idea. She had come to visit. She flew down. My husband was gone on another deployment. He'd been gone a few weeks. So she came to spend a few days with me. And she was on the phone quite a lot. And I was like, is everything okay at home? What's going on? Yeah, it's all fine. It's all good. Okay. So the next week, the proof copy of the first Delaney's of Delaware book showed up in my mail, just unexpected. Poof, there it was. That's what she'd been doing. She was on the phone with the formatter, making sure it was all going correctly. Bless her heart. So when I opened the package, it was just like, just chills. It was wonderful.
Nice. So reviews. What does it feel like for you? I mean, how much do reviews matter to you?
Reviews are subjective. But as writers, we have these huge egos that need stroked. And when we're not getting the right strokes, that can be painful. So, I try not to put too much into them. When I see 5 stars, I'm over the moon. If I see 3 stars, I'm okay with that too. I feel like I can learn from all of them. If it's a 1 star, a 5 star, I can learn something. I've had a book actually out for review that did not finished for the sole purpose that they didn't like the subgenre, the trope. You know what the trope is going in. Don't. Please tell me if the story holds water. To me, the trope is secondary. So that was kind of disappointing. And my first experience with a review was with the first book of the Flashpoint boxed set, Chase and Libby's story. It went out for review, and at that time, I didn't know what I was doing. No new writer really, truly. You can take the classes, you can read the books, you can do everything, but you're going to make mistakes. And my hugest mistake was I didn't know what a point of view was. Apparently, I could not hold a point of view. I was head hopping. I was everywhere. So this lady pointed that out. She graciously gave me 3 stars because she felt that the story was solid, but the point of view thing was too much for her. So the second editor that I ever had, her name was Edna. I won't say what press she was with, but I know. Probably the FedEx man. They love him. She straightened me out on point of view right away. I called her Edna the Barbarian. Wow. Yeah, but she got me lined out, and I knew after that what point of view was. But yeah, reviews I think they're subjective. You have to learn to take them with a grain of salt, because if not, you will agonize yourself. You make yourself kind of crazy. You just have to let it roll. It took me a long time to learn that, though. That is definitely not something that a novice published author knows straight out of the gate, is how to deal with reviews, and just know that they're subjective. Everybody has an opinion. Your stuff is not for everybody. Not everybody that picks up your book is going to love it. There are people that are going to hate it, and they're going to tell you. And you just have to say, well, that's just life. My stuff's not for everybody, and that's okay.
So, I mean, when you're writing, you write your books for yourself mainly, don't you?
I believe so. I believe that that's where it starts. I contemplated at one point, like, if I never published again, would I be okay with that? I think I would. But on the other hand, it's so good to know that somebody else picked up your stuff and they got something out of it, or they enjoyed it, or even if they didn't, because some of the reviews I've seen that were bad reviews, you come to realize it made them think. Otherwise, they wouldn't have this opinion. So, yeah, you've touched somebody somehow.
I mean, and that's the thing as a writer, that's what you're seeking to do. You're seeking to connect with somebody on a different level, whether they like it or not. You're taking them on this journey. It's like you've grabbed their hand and said, let's go.
Let's go.
just like anything, there may be a trip you go on with somebody that you really can't stand. It's life.
Exactly.
Um, let's see. So, what do you like to do when you're not writing?
I actually have quite a few hobbies. Of course, I read. I'm an avid reader. I find it weird when people tell me they don't read. I'm like, what? You don't read? Yeah, I love to read. In fact, I was up really late last night reading. I'm reading a series right now, and it kept me up past midnight. And I didn't even finish. Dang it! But I read. I hand embroidery. My grandma and my mom taught me to do that when I was a little kid. I crochet. I garden. I love to cook. Uh, I don't have as many people to cook for anymore. When my husband was in the military, we had these huge dinners all the time. In any of the holidays that came along, anyone that couldn't go home, make it, home for the holiday, I told them to come to my house. So sometimes I had 25 or 30, 50 people, no telling. Um, yeah, funny little story, and this is totally off topic, but I know we've talked about my travels a little bit. We lived in Okinawa, Japan for 3 years. And
Nice.
we lived in an apartment that was less than 900 square feet. The kitchen was a galley kitchen, and the appliances there are much smaller and tinier than American appliances. So my oven was very small, and I put a turkey in it. And I had this friend that was always he was another Marine, and he would kind of tease me and pick at me at times. And he came around the corner. I don't even know what he was doing in the kitchen because it was so small in there. And he said, "Hey, your oven's on fire."
Oh no.
Oh, ha ha! Shut up! You're such a teaser. And so he just went back into the kitchen, and he came back and he said, "Hey, I'm serious. Your oven's on fire." And I was like, "Oh my goodness!" So I ran in and pulled the door down, and flames just shot out. Holy crap! So I got the fire extinguisher and got it put out, but we lost our pies because the soda ash went all through the house. It just coated, we saved the other food, but the pies were ruined. And this was like it was either Thanksgiving or Christmas. Honestly can't remember, but I do remember this. I was teaching English as a second language when we lived there. And I had these lovely little ladies that had come over from mainland, sort of like an exchange. And so they were in my home for the whole weekend. And so they looked at me, and they weren't really familiar with a lot of American tradition. And they were like, "Is it always this, this nutty on the holidays?" And I'm like, "Definitely not." So we had, in a less than 900 square foot apartment, we had that day, I think 32 people in that little teeny apartment, and the oven's on fire.
I mean,
I lived on the 9th floor, and they all ran to the balcony. And I was like, "Sweet baby Jesus, do not let that balcony collapse." That's the last thing we need. So yeah, that's just a funny little story. One of our little travel, we've been in the Marine Corps and wore the t-shirt tails. So yeah, I don't have that amount of people to cook for anymore. So there's not that level of meals going on today in my house.
we
Yeah.
we made a turkey. It wasn't completely thawed. My husband did this, and it kind of overflowed a little bit. No problems. Nothing caught on fire. The next time we went to preheat the oven, though, yeah, we had flames.
Yep.
So
You get a
yeah,
t-shirt too.
I know exactly what you're talking about. You're like, yes, it's just shooting. You're like, well, so yeah, I get that completely. Um, so in your bio, you talk about planting and how you get inspired sometimes when you're planting. Now, when inspiration hits you, is it because you have this plot line played out in your head, or is it some character going, "Hey, me, hi, can you take care of my story for me?"
It can go either way. But mostly, I tell people I'm a plantster. So I'm part plotter, part pantster. I'm probably 80% planner. I have this long, extensive outline. I know all my characters really, really well before we ever start the first word. You know, who they are, what they're about, what their occupation is, what's their favorite food, their music. I know all that. But the 20% pantster, that's usually a character hijacking something. They'll come to me sometimes in the middle of the night. Hey, this isn't going where you thought it was going to go, lady. And so, yeah, when we're out there digging in the dirt, it's usually me talking to one of those renegade characters and like, okay, well, I understand that you think this is part of the story, but this is what I had planned. Where can we meet in the middle on this? So, yeah, it helps. And long walks help me too. That's another thing. We had talked about one of the blog groups I work with. We had that was one of our topics recently was what do you do to get in the zone? Definitely walks with the music in. That gets me going too.
So music is definitely part of your writing process then.
Oh yes, absolutely. I definitely write with the music on all the time. And if there's anything else going on in the house, I just put in the headphones. That way I'm not bothering anybody and I'm still in the zone. But yeah, music's a big part. And I normally listen to whatever the character dictates. So whatever they like, that's what's on the iHeart Quade up.
Okay. So what books or authors have most influenced your own writing?
So that's a good question. And I know that probably the question is geared toward something specific, like something profound. But I got to be honest, I think that everything I read and pick up influences me in some way and it teaches me something. Aside from entertainment, you know, I read in my own genres because I like to keep up with, you know, what's going on, who's writing what, and what's good out there now. But I think that there's something to be learned with everything that I lay eyes on. And the two greatest things that can be learned, what I want to aspire to do and what I should never do. So those are the two lessons, like what works here, what one of the things it readers building reader trust. We talked about this. I have a standing date with a blog group on Wednesdays and we have a blog challenge. And one of the most recent questions was something that put you off on a series or why you stopped reading a series. And I'm a huge series reader, I'm sorry. And it takes a lot for me to lay a series down because once I've read at least the first couple, I'm invested. And it usually I start one because there's something that has caught my eye. But one of the things that I did at one point put a series down that I absolutely loved, I was 6 books deep, was A Breach of Reader Trust. There was a character and she had been built up to be this certain way and that certain person. And all of a sudden she got her own book and she came out, she went from complete hard person, like tough girl to whimpering pile of goo. I mean, it was like a complete 360. And I was like, oh no, we can't. So that's not working. So I didn't read her book because it was such a put off. And I learned from that to always do my best not to break reader expectation and reader trust. If I have promised them something with the character, I have to deliver it more so than I promised, because if not, there's going to be disappointed people.
Right. Do you have a favorite type of music or artist that you like?
I love music. I just love music. I listen to everything from you never know, classical, country, rock, alternative, jazz. We've been kind of into jazz lately on the TV. If we're having dinner, we'll turn on some jazz. Spa music. I love the when I need to just kind of chill. Spa music's good. But as far as what I'm currently listening to and my current favorites, they are what are kind of my characters' music is what I've been listening to. And I have 3 channels queued up on my iHeart that just kind of constantly rotate. Breaking Benjamin channel, Thriving Ivory, and Evanescence. And they just rotate. And that's what I'm into right now.
Nice. So you have another release coming out. this year. Is there a work in progress?
Yes, there is. The work that's coming out later this summer is like we had talked about before, the first book of the S3 series, and it's called Parallax. The second book is called Recoil, and it's actually with my beta team. And the current work in progress is the third book in that series, and it's called Residue. And that book has been in the making a long time. He has been with me a really long time, since I wrote Kyle Montgomery's story back in 2013 or so. He was a secondary character. I knew then that there was more to him. I had no idea what. And the things that he's telling me now, I never imagined. So it's a real heartfelt story. It is still romance suspense in keeping with the theme of the entire series. And another theme that I've found, a thread that's holding the series together that I really didn't put my finger on it until recently, was they're all second chance stories.
Okay.
So for him, he's also a second chance in a way, but his story is more heartfelt and not quite as intense as the first couple stories. So yeah, it's going well. I'm probably about halfway with it, and I'm hoping that we actually see it hit Amazon sometime next spring.
Wow. So basically the whole series should be out by next spring?
Well, 3 is not it. I actually have 5, 6 outlined. Oh yeah, we're going strong with this one.
Series will be out by next year.
Yes.
So what are you currently reading right now? What kept you up late last night?
Jennifer Bernard. She writes a lot of firefighters, but she also writes just straight up contemporary. And she has a series out now called Rockwell Legacy, and it's set in the Cascades in Washington State. And when we lived in Washington State, the Cascades were our backyard. So it's been a lot of fun revisiting that area through her books. So I'm up to book 4. There's 5 in the series. And this one, I would have to say, so far is my favorite. But the character I'm most interested in of hers in this series is book 5. So I'm anxious to get there.
Okay. If you could choose 3 people to invite to dinner, who would it be? Would you serve? Besides sweet tea, of course.
There will always be sweet tea. So I thought about this question a lot. You and I talked quite a bit yesterday, and we're working through some technical stuff. And I really didn't have a good answer when this question first came up. And I had thought and thought. And last night, when I was just kind of kicked back, getting ready to go to bed with my book, I thought about that a little harder. And I think that when people ask that question in an author interview, or any interview for that matter, they kind of expect someone to come up with this huge historical figure, or some celebrities, or someone famous. And one person came to mind, and I was like, my grandmother. I grew up right next door to my grandmother. She literally, I could look out my door and see her house. And I spent a lot of time there with her because my mother worked. And so she was the person that put me on the school bus, and she was the person that got me off the school bus. And food was her thing. I mean, food was family time. It meant love. It meant everybody being together. And so she was one of the person that I keep thinking of when I think having a dinner, what I wouldn't do to have one more with her. She's passed on now. And so were her sisters. So her sisters would also be invited to this dinner because they were just such wonderful women, and they had so much wisdom to pass on, and they taught us to cook and what it meant to love. And they were just, I guess they're my idols. I don't know how else to put it. I would invite them, and we would have all of my favorite foods that they used to cook for us. And I would cook them for them, chicken and dumplings and fried chicken. And my one auntie, she made these fantastic green beans and potatoes and cobbler. We would have all that rich, fatty, whatever. We would have all the carbs that day, girl. I mean, all. So, yeah, that's who I would have, my grandma and her sisters. And if I could have three more people, it'd be my sister and my mama, because I would want them to have that time too.
Yeah, totally. Describe yourself in 3 words.
um, Creative, loyal, and tenderhearted.
Good choices.
And all that rolled up, and I still cuss a little. all, all that. Jesus knows it, and he hasn't struck me down yet, so we're good.
Everybody, if someone says they haven't cussed ever in their life, I'd be really surprised. Um, we have some fan questions. So, Niecy Gordon, she asked, which character have you written that feels like a kindred spirit? And I think we kind of covered that, but please elaborate.
We did cover that a little bit. My kindred spirit right now is Raylyn McIntyre. She's obviously the main heroine character from Reclaiming Raylyn, and she was married to the military for 30 years. She was a young military bride. At age 16, she was married, and she survived. She survived it. But we have a lot in common. I think as writers, there's a little piece of us in every character that we write there, or a piece of somebody that we know that's close to us. But for me, every single character has a little piece of me. But Raylyn, she's right now definitely my kindred spirit. She's my sister wife, and all this crazy military stuff that we both lived through, and got the t-shirt and told the tale. So yeah, definitely her.
Okay. George Compton Buckwell wrote, will this book be released in paperback?
Absolutely. They're not quite there yet, but they're being formatted. And when I say they, I mean everything that's on Amazon now to date will be coming out in paperback sometime this summer. I'm hoping in the next 30 days we will see the first, probably the Delaney's of Delaware will be first, followed by Flashpoint. And then I'm hoping soon after that, Reclaiming Raylyn will be in paperback. So I'm so excited about that. I know that some people live for the paperbacks, and I'm looking forward to having those, because I know that we have a lot of virtual signing events coming up this summer, and I want to be ready for that.
That's awesome. That is awesome. And congratulations on all of that. Brew McCormick had a question. I think most folks know, and we've talked about this, that you're a career Marine wife that's ever not made a homecoming.
Brew would ask that. I know Brew personally. He's actually one of the other writers that helps me run Sweet Tea Mafia on Facebook. No, I have never missed a homecoming. Each one is unique. They never happen at the same time. Sometimes you don't know your person's coming home until that day. But no, I've never missed one ever. Unlike Raylyn, who's my kindred spirit, she did miss Gavin's last homecoming intentionally. And most the readers know it's. I'm not giving any spoilers. It's in the blurb that is a problem. He comes home and his wife is missing. What in the world? What has gone wrong? Where did the train fly off the track? So yeah, but no, I have seen it though. I have actually been privy to that happening. It's not pretty. But things happen, like we had talked about before. People change. It's hard. It's a hard road. It's not for the faint of heart, especially when deployments are high in number, the way that they were back in the mid to 2010ish to 2018ish or so. It was high numbers of deployments going on. So I did see that. I saw soldiers, sailors, Marines coming home and no one waiting. The wife had left and taken the kids. It's heartbreaking, but it's life. And I think that we had talked about the inspiration for the book earlier. That was another thing. That is part of the lifestyle that rarely gets addressed, and certainly not in romance, because how romantic is it that this person came home and is heartbroken and a divorce is pending? But there's hope. Right. And what I wanted to let people know is that it doesn't always have to end that way. there is a chance. If you can get past the fact that you have changed and grown and your spouse changed and grew, there's hope. And that is why I feel it's important to address those issues in romance and not just the hard chested, running through the jungle with the big gun and all that. There are normal people. There are normal people. And I think that when you read normal people in romance, that there's hope for you because we're all normal humans. None of us are super people. So we all have these issues. The romantic part is how do we get past it and still end up in love?
Right. When I post sometimes on my group, I'll post a picture of a bare-chested guy or something, and I have one friend and she'll say, "Oh, he's not a drama." Because I mean, she knows that somebody that is bare chest, they're spending a lot of time putting that look together. So,
oh yeah.
do they have time for you? So I understand what she's saying, but it's always amusing because it's like the normal people, they actually might be more loving than the sex god. So anyway, I've digressed. I know you're on social media because I found you at Sweet Tea Mafia, and so tell our viewers where we can find you besides Sweet.
Well, Sweet Tea Mafia is on Facebook. It is a private group, but if you ask to enter the kingdom, we'll see to that gets happened. And especially you need to be doing that, kind of in the next few days because there's lots of new release news. So it's facebook.com/groups/Sweet Tea Mafia. That's where you can find that. Another good place to find me is on my website. I blog regularly. And I blog about personal things. I mean, I am an open book. I believe in being real with my readers. I want to connect with you. DixieJackson.net. You can find me there. And there'll be an opportunity to sign up for my newsletter. It'll pop up. So don't be afraid of the pop-up. If you don't want to mess with newsletters, just close it and move on. But there's the opportunity there. And you can also find me on BookBub. I have an author profile page on Facebook. And I do have my Dixie Jackson, just personal whatever page. If you want to be friends, hit me up. We'll see about it. I see your kitty. We've been photobombed. We've been BeLive bombed. That's good. Mine have finally settled and gone to sleep. Let's see. I think that's all the places you can find me. You can follow me on Amazon. I've got an author page on Amazon. I think, yeah, all the places you can find me too, if you can't remember all that, because let's face it, this is a live thing and I'm rattling and you don't see where it's spelled. Some people are visual. Just go to DixieJackson.net. All the links are on there, including one to join the Sweet Tea Mafia group where we have lots of fun.
Is there anything else you'd like to add before we say goodbye?
I would like to thank you so much for inviting me and helping me through all learning how to use all this. And we got through
different technologies we tried.
Yeah, so we did that. So thank you for that. And thank you to the readers and the people in my group and anybody that shared a link and my ARC team and my betas and my editor. Just thank all those people because they're so important. And let's face it, without that group of people, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you having a new release.
Sure. And I thank you for letting me catch up with you. And I wish you great success on.
Oh, thank you. And I look forward to doing this again.
Oh, definitely. Hopefully now that we have this done and it turns out good this time, we'll get this more and we'll have some other people do it too.
So, sounds like a plan.
So congratulations. And I'm going to sign off now. Take care.
All right. Thank you.